the week that has been, and we continue with the same guests that we had on set. We have David Osiani, Mark Bichachi, Ruth Ambogo, and last but not least, we're also joined by Philip Magal. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us this morning. And part of the things that we're looking at today being the 1st of November, we have another 6 days to go before the elections in Kibra. And of course, we have had quite a lot that has been happening there. But of course, we start off with, let me start with you, Philip, on what you have seen happening so far, and more so, maybe to the people of Kibra. What is it that they should be looking out for? Because politicians seem to always give promises that may not be kept. I've been reading that should they elect a certain candidate, this will be done, that will be done. For how long are these lies going to be told? But what they should be looking out for?
First and foremost, I think the bottom line is that I know, come that the D-Day, they'll either be voting for Raila or Ruto. Their issues or the issues that affect them will come second. But then we know that they are facing many, many issues that need to be addressed. Sanitation, water, the hygiene, housing. I mean, all the problems that face this country can be found in Kibra. And of course, it's not going to change, but it would start, the change would start if at all they took it upon themselves to vote somebody in that is capable of addressing their issues. But then who are the candidates on offer there?
Okay.
We know quite well that they are being fronted by parties, and the basis upon which they are being urged to vote for these people is that so that Raila is either not embarrassed or so that Ruto can get a gateway into the city. But you know, this is Kenya for you.
This is Kenya for you.
Yes.
David, there's always been the narrative of democracy that has been challenged by virtue of the fact that you have the masses choosing a person. But sometimes the question is, do those masses have enough to go with to know who is the best person, other than just either the political party that is backing them or the person that is behind them?
No, I think we underestimate the common voter. The common voter is very informed. The common voter knows very well this one is capable, even if they don't vote for him. The tragedy of our politics is, with all that knowledge and brilliance and insight, they still end up somehow getting to their default setting called tribe. Yeah. The common voter knows very well that Mariga may not be able to debate in parliament, I'm sorry to say, and that this other candidate, you know, has this or this one has that. They know. But when it comes to that D-Day, as Magal puts it, they are likely, a majority of them, not all of them, are likely to be swayed by their ethnic persuasions or their party affiliations. It will get down to the personality, political personality that they adore. Now that is why that's where the voter makes the mistake. I want to talk to the people of Kibra today and ask them, this is about your lives. It's about transforming your lives. It's about someone who will take over from the good works of former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, then Ken Okoth, and move far much higher and ahead of them. Go to the ballot and choose a leader for yourselves. Stop listening to what these other people have to say or the money they have to give. When it's all said and done, it's about your lives. You must understand that the parliamentarian you choose has to be able to get to parliament and legislate and make laws that impact on your lives. It's not about what you took home last night from the campaign trail. It's about what lies ahead for you.
All right. Ruth?
It is unfortunate that 55 years plus post-independence, we still have not matured in terms of democracy. We still haven't matured in terms of elections, because as you have rightfully put it, it is as if the Kibra residents have now been put in a position where they have to choose between Raila or Ruto, you know. And yet, within that particular contest, there are others probably stronger or even better political candidates. But then we have sensationalized our politics in a small constituency to become politics of two big political heads who are looking towards going against each other for the 2022 presidency. And you see, the cost of that is that at the end of the day, an informed decision, just as Osianya has put it, the decision is going to boil down to what our political party says, which is not a problem, because at the end of the day, if I am in ODM, then I'm expected to vote for an ODM candidate at the end of the day, how our political party system works, or tribal affiliations, as he has put it. But now, right now, it is actually, for me, in my view, it is going beyond tribe and party politics. It is now boiling down to also who has more money. And, you know, for me, my biggest concern in this particular Kibra election is that, you know, we are setting the tone for 2022 elections. Basically, what we have been seeing from the campaign trail is that we are saying that voter bribery is okay. We have seen, you know, both ends of the, I mean, all the various ends of the political parties that are campaigning at Kibra, telling the voters that if they give you the money, accept it. And in this day and age when we are trying to fight corruption, we are forgetting that corruption begins at the lowest level. As we are fighting the 63 billion shillings within the health ministry, the 900 million shillings that has been lost, we are forgetting that we are continuously on the ground entrenching corruption in our system, telling the voters that, you know what, it is okay to be bribed, it is okay to be paid an amount of money to sway your decision from one candidate to the other candidate. So for me, my biggest concern is that this election is setting the center stage for 2022, and unfortunately, the tone has been set that, number one, violence is still going to persist within our elections, because that is what we are seeing happening at Kibra. Various political parties, their cars being pelted with stones, their, campaigns being disrupted. Second, we are also seeing that, you know, money is still going to be a deciding factor in 2022, that he who has the money is going to decide, is going to basically have an upper hand in 2022 election. And third, once again, common sense has been thrown out of the window. Yes.
Just to note that, you know, the giver and the taker are both corrupt.
Exactly.
Just as we argue when we talk about the police officer who takes is as corrupt as the passenger who gives.
Absolutely.
So, the politician who gives is as corrupt as the voter who takes.
Yes.
Mark, of course, you've brought in something here, and that's, could this be a rehearsal for 2022? And currently, we are made to believe by the political class that we're waiting for a magic something that's going to come out of BBI that's going to sort us out as Kenyans, such that until that report comes out, we're all holding our breath, waiting for this report that's going to come and sort us out. Yet, when we look at Kibra, it kind of gives us a sample of where we are as Kenyans. Is violence still something that is associated with politics? It is. Is bribery something that is still entrenched when it comes to our political system? It is. Is personal politics something that we still contend with as opposed to ideologies? When we look at what is happening in Kibra, what ideas, what ideology has been brought by the political parties that will sort out Kibra as opposed to individuals where we're just looking at who is supporting who?
The Swahili say palipo na wazee haparibiki jambo. But in Kenya, when you introduce the political wazee, things get worse. Isn't that ironic? That if this election was between Ken Okoth and the people of Kibra, it would have been a very nice election, driven by agendas, driven by what we want to do for our constituency. But you introduce William Ruto, Raila Odinga, and Mudavadi, suddenly stones come in. So you must ask yourself the question, where is the poison coming from? Who are the poison makers in this country? And we must put it at their doorstep. We must ask ourselves that you cannot tell me that the people of Kibra knew how to vote in an MP in 2017 without corruption. They knew how to look at an MP and say, this is the person who can deliver on our agenda. And then suddenly they've become the people that you have to bribe to vote for you. What is happening? How is it that the people who voted for Ken Okoth had the presence of mind to even tell Raila himself, do not dare bring your relatives here, we know who we want. Those people now are the people who are being told, vijana, unajua 2013, mulipigana, sasa, hii miaka yote, mimi ndio nitaleta pesa, surely. That is the level of conversation and the level of intellect we've reduced the people of Kibra to. It is an abuse.
And is it the people of Kibra? Can we just generalize that and say it's Kenya?
It's not Kenya.
It's Kenya.
I want you to understand that if you look at the population dynamics and how you communicate to a population, the way the leadership does things is what affects people. When the leadership decides to introduce money as a factor, that leadership is at fault. And of course, the citizenry is at fault. But what must we reset as a country? What we must reset as a country is, what do we call a leader? Today, as we speak, if we looked at what a leader should be, some of the candidates and some of the people supporting those candidates would not be in Kibra today. Yeah. And that's the problem. The fact that we can casually talk about and say that money has been given out and that person is still a leader in this country, then there's a problem. The fact that they're still running and we are talking about allegations of corruption, there's a problem. The fact that people were pelted with stones and there's still an election in November 7th is a problem. Because what we are doing is we are normalizing bad behavior. Right. And that's a thing that must change. We must begin to punish these people. You need to be able to say, listen, I'm a voter in Kibra and I went to so-and-so's rally. Okay? And instead of giving me points, he gave me money. Please disqualify him. Yeah. That's what should happen. You cannot say that I'm applying for a job. I would really like to be part of the panel to discuss issues on Friday. That's what I'm applying for. And I cannot construct a sentence, never mind a paragraph. And I am still allowed to take the job. There's something wrong. There's something fundamentally wrong.
And definitely things then rise and fall on leadership. So Kibra, we're expecting maybe a lot of activity over the weekend as politicians go around making the usual promises and, maybe just a final word on Kibra. What advice would you give the people of Kibra?
First. Any politician who is in office and giving people of Kibra promises should resign first. Yeah. Because you can only give a promise when you don't have the capacity to do it. What are you promising? You understand? It's like, oh, my son, I'll buy you clothes tomorrow. Why didn't I buy yesterday? Come on.
No. All right. I think there's the other Kiswahili saying that says, zit farasi wawili wakipigana, nyasi ndio fahari wawili wakipigana, nyasi ndio umia. Right now, the Kibra people are literally the grass that we are talking about. They should be able to realize that at the moment, this seems to be a contest between personalities, that they should watch out and be very vigilant to vote in who they think will bring them development. Because at the end of the day, when the dust lands on, let's say, November 9th, after the results are released, Kibra will remain the same. Floods will come. People's houses will be swept away. There will be insecurity if they do not vote in the right leader.
I want to tell my brothers and sisters in Kibra, you are not going to teach anyone a lesson by voting for somebody else. It is yourselves. Sisi tutamfunza mara hii tutamfunza. You are not going to teach anyone a lesson. You are just going to join the greater statistic of Kenyans who have thought like that and ended up weeping.
Yes. Absolutely.
So choose leaders for yourselves. Don't come here saying tutamfunza around here. Don't even be told that we want to teach him. Because you cannot promise, you cannot promise 9 stadia and be the spokesperson for lies, until your partner looks at you like, my brother, that one was a classic. And then come now and say you want to build TVs.
You cannot. And I want us to look
just before you move on.
I want us to
I am quiet on this particular issue because, at the end of the day, I know that when it's all said and done, more will be said than done.
The same way.
Okay? No matter what we tell these people, no matter what we do, no matter,
made up.
They will do the things the same old way they're used to doing it.
All right, and I want us to look at something different, talking about the same old way. One of the things that, of course, that was a subject of discussion this week was the judiciary. Let me start with you, Ruth. Where are we in that regard? Because the judiciary was up in arms to a point where, not even up in arms, literally courts were shutting down by virtue of the fact that money has been frozen. They've been cutthroat austerity measures, quote unquote. Yet, on the other hand, today we have a headline of a CS who apparently may have tabled a report with figures that the people who are supposed to have received the money
selective austerity measures.
Exactly, selective austerity measures. Where are we in terms of the judiciary, and what does that mean for Kenya?
You see, at any particular point in anyone's life, for as long as you are managing a company, a business, a family, there comes a time when, you have highs and lows. And in your low season, austerity measures are called for. For example, if you're managing a family of, let's say, 2 children and a wife, and one of the children is now suddenly coming from primary school and joining high school. You have a very lean budget that has been constant. Same sources of income, and now suddenly you have a child joining high school. You see, that will call for austerity measures. In what sense? That if, for instance, you are spending 5,000 shillings on food per month, you will probably have to cut down if your sources of income are constant, that they are the same, and you're probably even going through losses, and let's say the economy is doing badly, so the cost of goods has gone up, you will have to reduce the amount of money you will spend on food, the amount of money you will spend on monthly entertainment allowance for your family, so that you can cater for the education of your child. The mistake that this country is making is that in its austerity measures, we are thinking that, apply the same measures for everybody else. And in fact, I remember when the acting CS Treasury came up and gave this memo about a month ago, he said that, it shall be non-compromising and nobody shall be spared. That is not how to conduct austerity measures. As you're putting up austerity measures to enable that, to ensure that the economy is sustaining itself and things are running according to plan without necessarily having to borrow more money, you have to have regard for particular institutions that, by and large, should not necessarily be touched. First, by virtue that even as it stands right now, they do not have enough funds to operate. We are talking about particular counties in this country that have courts that do not sit at all, have never sat for the past 1 year plus. Why? Because they do not have judges, meaning that the judiciary, as it stands, even before the austerity measures, do not have enough budgets to hire judges. You're talking about Tiati East, where Bichachi and I and a group of friends usually go to every once after 3 months, that do not have a physical structure in the name of a court. They sit in the courts are held under trees. So when you're doing these austerity measures, there should be some reason to it. That as you're cutting budgets, look at ministries that have not been, parastatals and ministries that do not even need the money that is being allocated to them. But have regard for particular institutions that cannot be touched. Cannot be touched in what sense? In the sense that the role they contribute towards democracy, the role they contribute towards peace and the general prosperity of this country cannot be undermined.
Correct.
When there is no justice, when justice is delayed in this country, you know that the delay of justice is basically the denial of justice. It is what leads to strife. It is what leads to communities fighting amongst each other. For instance, let's say if it is a land issue that has not been resolved because courts are not sitting, like you saw in Mombasa, the courts had to move from Malindi, is it, to Mombasa? When
correct.
courts are not sitting and we are talking about a serious land issue that needs to be resolved, then what are you saying? You're delaying justice, and therefore you're basically putting in place catalysts for people to fight for civil strife. Courts should not be touched in this country.
David Osiani, let me come to you. The judiciary is an arm of government. We cannot afford not to afford.
I ask myself, who loses in the battle between judiciary and executive? Who has the power to literally bring this country to its knees, including that executive? The advice to fight the judiciary is ill-timed. It is wrong. Of course, we have to demand accountability from the judiciary.
Correct.
But it does not look like we are demanding for accountability if we cannot go to Afia House and demand for accountability for 4.5 billion shillings. That's why I say the war against graft must be seen to be objective and targeted to all state departments and arms of government. You are not going to tell me that now we have crippled the judiciary, yet we have added a budget to Ministry of Health. Yet, the amounts that we lose are crazy. We have to be objective in our fight against graft and in our demand of accountability of all arms of government and all departments of state. We are not going to say that it is objective unless we see it for what it is. Remember, last week we said, and we advised the president, swear in the judges that do not have issues, because certainly not all the 41 judges that have been appointed by JSC have an issue. You are going to say that 15 of them have issues, attach the issues that you think they have, take it back to JSC and tell them reconsider, because as president, you also have that duty to watch over the citizens. But while you do that, can we see the people who have presided over graft in other state departments do the same? When you deny this country the ability to preside over justice, and then one day the CJ says, okay, courts are closed.
Yep.
So tomorrow, people are going to murder each other.
Yes.
They are going to pile up in cells, and there's no one to listen to those cases and dispense of them.
It is a dangerous place to be. Mark
You
Bichachi?
can't afford it.
Yeah, absolutely.
My friends have made quite solid points, and I do not want to highlight and underscore them more, because if the points are solid. But let me just bring it to a mathematical question. The judiciary is a revenue center for government. So if it's about money, do you want the judiciary to sit more? Because every day a judge sits, there's monies, there's fines, there's whatever, which are a revenue for government. So it does not make sense to me why in austerity measures you would shut down a revenue center. It's not making sense, because the judiciary, when there's traffic violations, those fines go to who? They don't go to the judiciary, they go to the exchequer. You understand? So it is something, one, you're clamping down on judgment. Two, it's making you look like you're fighting the judiciary. Then three, it is a revenue center for you. So it does not make sense, Bwana CS. Think about it. The more tribunals sit, the better they for the economy, because you are resolving business disputes. How many resources are tied up in the legal system? If you're talking about the economy of the country, how many legislative processes need to be speeded up so that people can transact in this country? How many monies are tied in escrows and different accounts that are waiting for people to settle cases in court so that that money can be introduced to the economy?
Right.
Think about it. It's a revenue center.
I think you've all made valid points, but I would do wrong to leave Magal, who is a lawyer, out of that conversation. Magal, close for us on the judiciary.
I take a different look at the whole of this issue.
As always.
You know, this is a scaffold between the executive and the judiciary. It's really not about money. 3 billion to me is what is spent at State House for breakfast.
Wow.
Look at it all the way from the time this new constitution was put in place. There have been constant friction between the executive and the judiciary. Why? Because of what I perceive, or what I would like to call, juristocracy. This new constitution has greatly empowered the judiciary, and judiciary is somehow interfering with the discharge of the function by the other two arms of government. An example I like to use is the affordable housing. Okay? This matter has been tied in court for the last 1 year. It means the president cannot deliver on that promise. At the end of his term, he's the one who will go back to the ballot and be judged by the people. Maraga won't be on the ballot. The judiciary has constantly been involving in what we call mega politics. Okay?
Big.
Making determinations that should otherwise be left to Parliament and the executive. It is involving itself in policy issue determinations. The president tries to levy tax, somebody runs to court, you cannot levy tax. The president tries to do this, and you can see there is some lack of deference by judiciary for the other two arms. If today you were to go to court and argue that Parliament enjoys certain privileges and therefore the House should defer to it before interrogating its business, none of the judges would listen to that. And it is this friction that has gotten us to the point now where all the three arms are looking at each other eye to eye, expecting one to bat an eyelid first. And unless and until the heads of these three arms sit down and have a consultative meeting and decide to work separately and
independently.
Yes, yes, interdependently as well as independently, we'll continue to have this friction. Of course, the independence of the judiciary is a big thing. Of course, under the supremacy of the Constitution, they are given powers to interrogate anything that might have some element of constitutionality in it. But they should be wary that they do not interfere with the functions of the other two arms. Unless and until they do understand that, I believe this is what the president is saying in so many words. I am trying to do this, you people interfere. I appoint people, you give a stay order. I try to collect tax, you injunct me. What do you expect me to do?
So is this
You see,
a
for me,
solution?
so for me, that's my worry is that is that the solution?
Yeah.
And then again, the question also is the judiciary acting out of law? Because if indeed they were acting out of law, by now we would have seen advocates going to court. By now we would have seen Parliament, Parliament itself subjecting itself to the court itself. There are higher levels of the court. The court process does not, the judicial process does not end at the High Court. There is the Court of Appeal. There is the Supreme Court. So is that, basically what Magal is telling us is that the president is right in clipping the judiciary?
No, let me say
Not
this.
that he's right. What I'm trying to say is this. Even if the court considered that this matter is right for determination by court, imagine, for what reason would they give for having the affordable housing matter in court for over a year now? Some of this matter should be dispensed with within a week.
Magal speaks as if he doesn't know that there are cases that have been pending in court for 10 years.
Yes.
And whereas I agree with him to an extent that there have been a few judicial officers. You see, we are not going to take the judiciary and hang it on the tree as if all judicial officers are that corrupt, okay?
It's
But
not
I
really
also understand that administratively, as the person who is in charge of allocating cases and as the boss of the judiciary, definitely the CJ, seeing that some of these issues are of great importance and, public importance, he should have said, can you speed up this matter and I need a ruling in 2 weeks?
Yes.
That he has not done, and for that we would blame him. But to say that we are going to blame him for stopping the 1.5% levy, which helps all Kenyans, is wrong. So I prescribed a medicine for these two people. I said, President Uhuru Kenyatta and Maraga need to lock themselves inside a room, the two of them, without their assistants, and talk about this country and decide we need to move this country forward. Because when we decide to cause this stalemate, the person who hurts is neither Uhuru nor
What you're
Maraga,
saying
it
is
is
that
us.
And let's
Uhuru
be
and
clear.
Maraga should have a handshake.
And let's be clear, this is not a solution to anything. This measure is not going to solve anything.
It
If
isn't.
anything, those tensions will be worse. But I agree with Magal. The judiciary has been used to hamstring the issues that the executive wants to push through, and that is wrong. But the executive cannot respond, and I do not think the response was meant to punish the judiciary, because there have been budget cuts across the board.
No.
But what needs to be addressed urgently is the budget of the judiciary needs to be ring-fenced. There is no way on God's green earth that we spend much more money on the dwellers of this world than we do on the Maragas of this world. It does not make sense. You don't spend more money in parliament than you do on the judiciary.
Okay, I need us now to move away from the judiciary because we're running out of time, and I wanted us to look at the highway.
Yes.
It looks like, David Osiani, your cry was heard
Yeah, of
last
course.
week when you said that we need to make sure that Uhuru Park does not get touched.
I mean, no one was happier than me to see that they have reconsidered. And I want to, I know Magal and Bichachi couldn't even believe that we could put so much pressure on the state. I appreciate that they finally heard our cry and said, you know what, let us preserve this if it's causing so much chaos. There is need, that's heritage.
And I think that needs to be appreciated, that at least sometimes they listen, because they could still bulldoze.
No, it's a good thing.
So it's a good thing that
It's
they
a good thing that they listened. I also said that the next, I had only two issues. The highway going in through Uhuru Park and whether it was a priority for us. Whether or not, I've seen people crying about, don't charge. I said, guys,
That's not an issue.
globally, there are highways for which you have to be told to go through.
Yes.
Listen to me, guys.
Yes.
Once we have decided that this is a priority, which I don't agree with, whether it is told or not is how we will have deterrence. Ukiona kulipa 324 from Syokimau to James Gishuru is going to be too hard. You will have two options.
Yes.
You will get
To me,
into a
it's traffic.
matatu
Yes.
or get into traffic. And I tell you, the easier thing for them will be to leave their cars at home and get into a matatu.
Which would get
That, for me, therefore,
is a win.
is not an issue. Let's collect money that we can, as much as we can. Just leave Uhuru
Of course,
Park.
of course, for Kenyans, the issue might be that money, whether when it's collected, where it goes.
But
That's a
but
story for
but,
another
but
day.
the
I was
money,
not here. I was not here last week. Give me a chance.
Celebrating his victory, yeah? I wish to see that day when Osiani would take his daughter to Uhuru Park.
I do.
And his dog.
I do.
And sit
Yes.
there and
You
play
see, this is the
catch.
problem of
You
this
know.
is the problem of middle class and high class.
Yes.
They forget that Uhuru Park. I take my daughter. I've been with my daughter to Uhuru Park. It's a
Yes.
fact.
So-
I have been, and on a day-to-day basis, when I'm unable to, when I'm running errands in town, I go to have a meal in Uhuru Park.
Sit down and relax.
I
Right.
do.
Ruth was
I
not there
was
last
not
week, so
here
I
last
want
week.
to hear what her take is on this.
I was not here last
yes,
week.
go right ahead.
But for me, my contribution would just be very simple. That sometimes when we let the country get away with some things that we think are very minor, we set the tone for other bigger things that they can get away with. That had we not spoken about the environmental value of Uhuru Park, the heritage aspect of Uhuru Park, and let the government continue with its plans, what we would be doing is that 5 years from now, 2 years from now, if the government would say that, you know what, we are going to clear up some forest somewhere in Rift Valley to build up a particular, big story ICT hub
or
then
whatever.
then we would not even have the moral ground to stand and say, oh, you cannot clear that forest. Because the government would tell us that don't forget that we already, passed a road through Uhuru Park. So for me, I think it is very important that we raise our voice when such issues come up. I know that Bichachi will talk about how Uhuru Park was already, a bit of it was already a road reserve. But for me, it's the bigger idea, which is, I watched the interview last week on Friday, and that is what you said, if I am not. So for me, my contribution is that when we let small things, what we would consider as minor policy issues, minor small decisions pass, then we are setting the tone for bigger decisions that will affect us as a country. And we cannot go back and say, oh, we were not aware back then. The government will tell you that, we already cleared, for example, 50 acres of land somewhere in a forest, and you have nothing to say about it. And the bigger question also here is, over and above the heritage aspect of it, there is the whole climate change discussion that is ongoing right now. And small decisions like those go towards affecting bigger decisions that will either, increase the rate at which climate change is going to affect this country or not. Okay. And 20 years from now, 50 years from now, corruption will not be our problem.
All right, I want
climate
to hear from
change
Philip,
will.
then we finish off with Mark.
Of course, I'm happy that the government has made some adjustment to its initial plan. Like any other Kenyan, I have some sentimental attachment to Uhuru Park.
Do you go to Uhuru Park yourself?
He doesn't.
I've crossed it going down from, coming down from Upper Hill.
In your hustling
And,
days.
and to me, it's not
He
really
goes
a
through. He doesn't go to.
It's not.
And that was his hustling days. He doesn't do that anymore.
It's not
He can
really a
afford an
green
Uber.
space,
Anyway,
is
carry
it? It's not really a green space, is it? And that is really my argument.
on. What do you mean it's not a green space?
When you go there,
It is patchy, it is red, there is a road running through it.
But
The
that's because,
sentimental attachment we have to it, and I know David Osiani has to it, is the fact that he might, in another 10 years, he might not have a place to hold a 10 million man match. Not that he won't have a place to take his daughter to. If we are to talk about such serious issues, let us not be superficial about it. If it is about green spaces, we need green spaces in Korogocho, we need green spaces in Kibra, we need green spaces.
The point was, if we allow government to take that 1 kilometer, then what stops them from taking the rest?
Exactly.
And I even want to show you pictures. I was at Uhuru Park last week, just to show you that it is actually a green space.
Yes.
Magal is removed from the.
No.
Reality.
If you are to
He
talk
has
about,
not been
if
there.
you are to talk about green space, let's talk about Nairobi National Park. Let us talk about Karura Forest.
Let's talk
where
about Uhuru Park.
where it is a park only by name. All the same, I'm glad that the government has altered its decision, taken the route some other place. But when, it had gotten to a point where people were arguing that either we have the road or we have Uhuru Park. I mean, what would you go for? What would you go for?
Well, let me weigh in on this. Dear Kenyans, here's my sincere wish that just as we've preserved Uhuru Park, can we preserve the Mao?
Exactly.
Thank you.
Because we cannot be the same country that is saying government cannot be allowed to take an inch of Uhuru Park. And then we want to take miles upon miles of Mao forest. And we cannot be the same people who support politicians who say that people should stay in the Mao no matter what. If we are going to preserve our green spaces in this country, let us be consistent about it. Number two, if we are going to develop this country, let's not be wishy-washy about it. And this is what really makes me tired of my country. Let me give you an example. We were very excited when the Chinese didn't give us the loan for the last phase of the SGR. And then when our railway terminated where our money ended, we were still the same people complaining, saying, why is it a railway to nowhere? It is stupid. Let me tell you, it cannot be that don't take a loan, don't finish. And then when you don't finish, we complain you didn't finish. Which one do you want? Second thing, you want development in the country, and then you want that development without a loan, and then you don't want a toll road. What do you want? It can't work. The reason why that is a PPP and a toll road is so that the government does not take those loans you're crying about. So what did it do? It did the next best thing. It's got infrastructure projects that it's going to build. And this is not the only one. There's another one coming up in Maimahiu, where if you want to go to Nakuru on a fast lane, you'll have to pay for it. And it's done the world over. So Kenyans, please make up your mind. If you want free stuff, then what happens is be willing to pay for it through your loans and your taxes.
But I hope
when the
he
government
doesn't
does, let me finish, when the government does a PPP, right, where it is optional for you to get onto the expressway or not, for the princely sum of 300 shillings, as though the Tusker in your local costs a lot more or less, right? Because you're willing to take so much Tusker, but you're not willing to spend 300 shillings to save time. No, come on. As a country, we are pretentious.
Let me just say that the fight that Kenyans had with SGR was not that they badly did not want to take money. They were just saying the money we have taken was enough to get it to Malava, but it has ended in Maimahiu. Why? If that question is addressed, that's good. But I also agree with Mark to the extent that sometimes it's just negativity upon negativity. So today, the people who celebrated, who did not want the highway to go through Uhuru Park, will start a new war. Why are you charging us? Yet we all know that if that is the easier way than incurring ridiculous costs of interest on debt, paying for toll is a much easier option. So we need a bit of positivity. We cannot live our days every day very sad and brooding over the next problem and looking for them.
Philip, your closing remarks, I hope they're as positive as his.
Of course, I'm always ever positive. And of course, mine do go to the people of Kibra. The spotlight is on you. You've shown this country the way for, I think, 2 decades or 3 decades now. We are looking up to you. We expect that you'd show us the way. Vote for a man that you deserve. Vote for a person that will lead you out of, the state that you currently are in. Don't vote for Baba. Don't vote for Ruto.
Okay.
I haven't given my closing.
I want to give you the last one.
Save the best for last.
The last one. Save the best for last.
I thought he had given his closing remarks.
No, not yet. But please close.
It is critical that as citizens of this country, we examine our own souls. By that, I mean this, that when we say the economy is not performing, by extension, you're saying you're not performing. Because the government is not a factor of production. We are that factor of production. When you say SGR does not have cargo, let me tell you, State House does not have cargo to put on SGR. We do. When you say the expressway is not going to be used, who is going to use it? Ugandans. It is Kenyans. The same way when we are voting in Kibra, we are not voting for Ruto, you're voting for yourself. And if you want to understand the consequences of who you vote for and how it affects you, ask the party after party people of Nairobi. and ask the people of Kiambu.
Ruth,
I feel attacked. The party after party people.
or you a party after party person?
I just feel
You
attacked.
just feel attacked. All right,
Yes.
your closing remarks, very brief.
In my
from
closing,
Kiambu?
in my closing remarks, I'd like to urge the government that in its plans and policy measures to try and, prevent the economy from going down further, that the government should have multifaceted approaches towards trying to prevent the economy from falling. For instance, the reason why the austerity measures have been put in place, one of the discussions is that agriculture is underperforming. Over and above now putting up austerity measures, reducing budgets from various ministries, including the Ministry of Agriculture itself, that we are talking about it underperforming. What else are we doing to ensure that we are boosting the performance of the Ministry of Agriculture? If it would call for the firing of officials in various ministries who are corrupt, then let us do that. If it would call for restructuring of ministries and moving around personnel so that the right people for the right jobs are put in place, then let us do it. However, also, if it can call for us trying to find measures of ensuring that the various underperforming ministries can perform better, then let us do it. For example, agriculture. It is meant to be the backbone of this particular country. We're talking about agriculture underperforming, yet we have farmers who have produce that is going to waste. So how can we boost our relations, for example, with other countries? We have countries that are in need of agricultural products. How can we enhance that bilateral relations between us and other countries? For example, the countries that are drought-stricken and cannot have
All right,
agriculturally
Ruth,
viable land.
we are-
For instance, Somalia,
we are out of
Somaliland.
time.
Can
We
we
are out
boost
of
our
time.
relations between these
Thank you
countries
very much.
and ensure that
when all is
the
said and done,
various
Kenyans must learn.
parastatals
Kenyans
are,
must learn to be
you know,
selfish
Ladies
and
and
choose
gentlemen,
for
we
themselves
need to finish.
what is
Ruth
best
Ambogo,
for them.
thank you very much. She is a youth policy advisor. We are going to finish here so that we release you to go for the party after party. Thank you very much, Philip Magal, who is a lawyer, Mark Bichachi, communication strategist, and David Osiani, a governance expert. Thank you for joining us this
Thank
morning
you.
on Week in Review. Well, that's where we wind up Week in Review this morning, but do stay with us. We take a short break right here on Morning Express, and in case you're wondering why we're here for the launch of the 2019-2022 Corporate Strategic Plan for NSSF.